This thing is pretty awesome. It has all your balanced inputs, your balanced outputs, and it has the most extensive menu system that I've ever seen on a DAC that really makes this unique, and it allows pretty much any user to be able to use this in the configuration that works best for them. And I think that's what really separates this DAC from other DACs. So I'm going to start off this review by telling you this is my favorite DAC that I have ever reviewed. So if that's all you need to hear, you can leave the video now. But if you want to know why, let's dive a little bit deeper inside. This, if we turn it around, has pretty much all the ins and outs that you would ever want. It has your USB, it has your I2s, it has your digital coax, it has a digital fiber optic, it has a service port, which my understanding is you can actually update that firmware yourself. It does have Bluetooth 5.0, it does have an AES EBU input, and then its outputs are both your RCA and then of course it has XLR outputs as well. Now internally this does have two DAC chips as well. Now the reason why most manufacturers use two DAC chips is because of the fact that you can lower your signal to noise ratio. And this does have a low signal to noise ratio, but that's not it. I mean, the thing that I really love about this DAC is it has the most extensive menu system that I've ever seen on a DAC. And it really does allow you to use the DAC in the best configuration for you. Now let's go ahead and look at the menu system. You're gonna see that it's pretty extensive. As you see, as soon as you click it on, you can change your inputs, you can change your outputs, you can actually change the PCM filter. There's 3 different PCM filters that you can change it to fast linear, to slow minimum, and to minimum phase. You can change the SPDIF mode, but one of my favorite things on here is this sound color. Now sound color is pretty cool. One of the things that people always ask me when I review an amplifier or a preamplifier or a headphone amplifier or anything like that is, hey, what's it sound like? Some people like that really, tube sound, which kind of adds a little distortion, but it just has that nice mellow sound. Some people want that real rich sound, and then there's other people that just kind of want a subdued sound. And what SMSL did is they put 9 sound colorations on there to really just change the coloration of what it sounds, and it makes a huge difference based on what you are. So some of them sound really, really bright, some of them sound really subdued. My favorite was Tube 3. That really did make it sound like a tube amplifier, and I love that because I'm not really a huge fan of having a tube amplifier on my desk or somewhere else like that. The tubes break, it's really hot because they're very inefficient. They play really warm, they get hot. So the fact that I can get the tube sound out of something like this is awesome for me. I just absolutely love the fact that I can do that. Now, if we keep going through the menu system, it does give you a pre-mode. Put the pre-mode on, and this volume control no longer works, which means that now the volume control of either your headphone amplifier or the amplifier, whatever you hook this up to, will be your main volume toggle, which you'll want if if you're using it in that way. However, if your amplifier does not have a volume control, you can use this, of course, like a preamp, and this could actually become your volume control, which is really nice. And as you continue to go through, you're gonna see a bunch of other things, such as DPLL, and your I2s mode. Now, I2s mode was kind of confusing for me because I've really never messed with I2s. And so I wanted to get someone on the channel that knows a little bit more about I2s than I do. So this is Philip, and Philip knows a little bit more about I2s. He's gonna explain that to us and explain why you might want it.
Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate all that you do for the DIY community. And again, I'm no expert by any means, but I'm happy to share with y'all what I do know and hopefully help those who are just getting started in this area with some basic knowledge about I2s. I think probably first where we should start is just what is I2s? I2s is a serial bus standard used for connecting digital audio devices. Let me give kind of like an imperfect analogy to help everybody kind of understand. So I think most people may be a little bit more familiar with something like computers.
Hmm.
And if you've ever built a computer, you may be kind of familiar with, a motherboard, a CPU, and things of that nature, and how the graphics card, connects to the motherboard via PCI Express. And so PCI Express is very similar to I2S, where it's primarily a circuit-based serial bus for communication. And in the digital audio realm, that's kind of the standard of how digital audio components talk to each other. There's a difference between like circuit communication and like digital transport, um, where PCI Express may be similar to I2S, which is a circuit board communication, but transports are different, and that might be something like a USB or Ethernet going kind of a long distance. It's similar to like Toslink or like digital coax, where that's a transport carrying the signal like a long distance. So the DO200, if you look at the pinouts and the diagrams in the manual, you'll notice that there is I2S, but there's positive and negative. So it's a balanced I2S. And in DIY section, in that area, balance is not as common. But in the really kind of ultra high end, I would say they would use balanced I2S as an interconnect. So this really allows you to kind of scale to some of that really high end gear.
And so that would be on like the high end CD players. That would be on your high end DSPs and things of that nature, right?
Mm-hmm. And it also kind of gives you that neat upgrade path. So, I mean, and really, I wish more people would do it, even though it's some people, may not could care less about it, but it does give you the path of going to like nice high-end gear. Will sometimes have this I2S, but even the random stuff too. It just gives more access to more people.
So this is a way to connect the different pieces of equipment, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So why would I care about that when I could use something like RCA or like you said USB or something like why would I want to use the I2S instead?
It really allows for a more direct connection straight to the DAC.
All right, so I think that's pretty cool of why you might want one. I love the fact that it works on higher end gear. Now, one of the things that me and Philip discussed was that I2S mode actually has different hookups in the HDMI. And if you look inside the manual, it's actually going to show you the different ways that the I2S can be hooked up. Now, here's the problem with that. If your device, like your CD player or something that you're hooking up with I2S for that more direct connection, is wired differently than your device, then you're going to have issues. It's not going to work correctly. And what SMSL has done is they've actually allowed you to change this inside the software, inside that menu system, so that you can now hook up whichever device you have, and all you have to do is a couple switches in the menu, and it will be wired correctly. There's no physical changing of the wiring. It does it all internally inside the DAC. And that to me is just awesome. I love that. On a side note, I kind of wish that there was a standard for that so that wouldn't be necessary, but I'm glad that they did that because that makes hooking this up to an I2S significantly easier. And the cool thing about that is it's all balanced. The I2S is balanced. You have your XLR balanced. Now, sometimes with your connections, you actually need to invert those. And the cool thing is when you go into output, you can actually invert your connections, which is really nice. Now, the reason why you might want XLR is if you've ever hooked up multiple units, like say this in a headphone amplifier, and you start getting what they call a ground loop. You start hearing that noise inside. One of the easiest ways to get rid of that is to use balanced connections. And so you would just plug out of here into your next device, and hopefully that gets rid of all those ground loop problems that you were having before. And I love that. The other cool benefit of doing something like a balanced connection is it does increase your voltage, which increases, of course, your output to your headphone amplifier and your output to your regular amplifier. Now, the cool thing about that is sometimes when they say that headphone amplifier and amplifier has so much wattage, some of that is assuming that you're using that balanced input, which has the higher voltage output on it. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Now, one of my favorite features on this isn't even shown or really even stated, and that's when you plug up a source to this, it's gonna tell you what is playing. And I really love it because it actually lights up like a high res if you're playing a high res file. Just shows that little display. I don't know, it just makes me feel good. It'll tell you if it's playing MQA, and those that have wanted MQA on a DAC, this one does do MQA on it. It does aptX, it does DSD. I mean, it does all your high-res files, and that is another really great thing about this. This wasn't just designed so that you can use it for whatever. It's also designed in a way that you can still get the highest quality sound out of it. Now, this does come with a remote control, and it's a fairly basic remote control, but the one thing I do like about it is it does look different than their amplifier remote controls, so it's easy enough, you don't have to get confused with it. Now, I used this for quite a while, and I did use this with the SMSL HO headphone amplifier primarily, although I did hook it up to their DO200 and hooked it up to another amplifier that you guys haven't seen yet. And I gotta say, this thing beat my expectations by far. I was really, really surprised and shocked by this. It's an expensive DAC. It's not a cheap DAC. But typically, I don't know. You just, sometimes when you get these expensive ones in, you just think that some of it's going to be gimmicky and they're only going to care about sound quality, or they're only going to care about whatever. This cares about functionality along with sound quality. And I think that's what really makes this unique. It really does make things sound better. And I love, which I've already mentioned, that sound color mode really was huge. When I plugged up my headphones to that, which are the Beyerdynamics DT770 Pros, at first, I mean, well, I liked it at first, and I've always liked the DT770 Pros. But when I started working with those and messed around with those sound color modes, all of a sudden, those headphones sounded different. They really mellowed them down, and it really brought kind of like that good distortion you get from a tube amplifier out. And I loved it, man. I mean, it completely changed those headphones in a way that I haven't had by just hooking up one piece of gear to it. I've hooked up other amplifiers. I've even hooked up tube amplifiers. And in fact, I replaced it from a tube amplifier. I was using a tube amplifier when I was listening to it before I put this on there, which I liked. Of course, I didn't like that it was hot. And this sounded even better than that. So overall, I'm just going to tell you right now, this is my favorite DAC. So if we look at the website, I don't even have to like even second guess. It's my favorite DAC by a mile. Is it 4 times better than the topping? Topping's somewhere around $100, $150. And the answer to me would be, yeah, it is. The topping's a good DAC. There's nothing wrong with the topping. But the way that this works with the functionality and everything else that goes on. I mean, really, the way that I see this is like if you're looking for a DAC that you want to grow into, maybe you don't know what type of gear you're going to be getting next, this really does fit the bill because it has all of those things to it. I think this is really going towards an audiophile person. It also would be for someone that really just likes their high-end gear and wants something high-end. And I think that's exactly where this is. But it's high-end with actual functionality. It's not just high-end because of the price tag, and I appreciate that. I'll put it this way. Most of the time when I get gear in for review, it ends up going to my patron garage sale, and the patrons get it. Now, I told them that I'm going to hold on to one DAC. I'm not really sure what DAC, or I might hold on to one headphone amp. I'm not really sure what I'm going to hold on to, but I might hold on to one. Everything else goes into the patron garage sale. This is not going in the patron garage sale. This is staying with me. This is one of the ones that's going to stay in my collection for a very long time. I don't see anything coming to replace this anytime soon. I just don't. It's really that good. At least in my eyes, it's that good. That's the review for today. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to like the video. And as always, this is Toyd's DIY Audio. And I'm out.